We're marching forward, as I was hoping to get through this over the days of over the 3 weeks, so that we'd be finished with it, so we could go back to taunting people afterwards. But that's not funny, right? So we're going to continue forward. I want to share something here as soon as I get to it. Okay, so hold on. I'm trying to remember where we're up to. Oh yeah, I skipped a page. One second. Okay, here we go. So we were up to deceiving, asking someone for help when you know you don't really need it, and the person is investing his time, his energy, but worried, and you're taking advantage of him. That's I know it's Dvar. Then it goes on like this. It says another famous dangerous territory where people sometimes are careless. It says one should not say to a Baal Tshuva, someone became from. Remember how you acted before you became from. Don't make reference to what he may have done. It doesn't necessarily mean even if you plan on deriding him, but alluding to a certain part of his life when he wasn't observant, it might be painful to him. So a person has to be careful not to allude to things that he did in his former life, before he became from. One should not tell someone who is a descendant of a ger, remember the ways that your ancestors acted. Again, also being sensitive to people who have a past and being sensitive to that. If it obviously you can make a reference to it if it's purposeful and the person likes to talk about it, or that he likes to share his experience. But obviously, it could be embarrassing. One has to be careful. And then again, this is written for camp, so they give similarly reminding someone of how he didn't play by the rules of the game by telling him, do you remember when you used to play Stratego, how you'd move the flag? I don't know if anyone had to play Stratego, but you don't move the flag. The flag, I think that's a joke. The flag stays still, everything else goes around. So he says, or another example, telling someone, do you remember when you took the bat with you while you were running around the bases? Okay, reminding someone how badly he played last summer at the beginning of the summers, I know it's Dvar. Oh, now there's another interesting halacha. This is something that always bothered me. I'm not sure. I hunted around. I didn't find anything on it. The Gemara says, it's actually, these are all based on the Gemara. The Gemara says a rather lengthy brisa, and it says on that Mishnah that I quoted when we started, just like you're not allowed to deceive someone with words, in money, you're not allowed to deceive someone through the power of words and cause pain and all the things that we spoke about. So then it says, Ketzad. So the Gemara brings a brisa, and it goes like this. If he was about tshuva, don't say, remember your old ways. If he's a descendant of Gerim, don't tell him, oh, what was it like, when your ancestors came on the Mayflower. Im haya ger ubal lil Torah, if he's a convert who came to learn Torah, don't say to him, don't make reference, oh, how can, what connection you have to learning? You have a past, you ate not kosher and vermin and all sorts of crazy stuff, and you want to come with Torah. All right, that's already pretty caustic. Then he says like this. This is the one I want to get to. Im ha'yusum barnel. If you see someone who's suffering, so im ha'yuchalayim b'imalav. If you see he's having illness, aishayim makavers banavu. Unfortunately, his children are being sick and possibly burying them. Al yaimalai. Don't say to him keder shamalai chaver liyav. Iyav was suffering. And his friends, they were his friends. They were actually his friends. They weren't, they meant his welfare, but nevertheless, they were telling him, they're trying to give him, perspective. So they said, the words of the pasuk go like this, and I'll explain to you what it means. Halo yirascha kislasecha tikvascha v'tayim jerchecha. Your Yirah Shamayim, your fear of God, was what made you, firmly implanted and unbending in your commitment to his will, and tikvascha, your hope, and the innocence of your ways. Zecharna, and they tell you, realize, mihu naki avad, who is free of sin, that loses, that suffers. In other words, basically they were telling him, they were saying to him, look, the fact is, nobody suffers unless they have some sort of reason that they suffer for. So I'm not sure they were castigating him, but they were just saying, look, you yourself, you used to profess that you believe in God, and there's a rhyme and a reason. Everything happens for a reason. So they were sort of telling him, says, look, if life is being rough, there must be something that you're being held accountable for. So telling someone telling someone who is suffering in pain or other hardship, you deserve it, or this is something you should accept. So again, I'm not sure if it means. I don't think they were deriding him and degrading him. They were saying, "Look, that's the fact." But the Gemara says that's a Dvar. Telling somebody else that they should make a cheshbon nefesh. Maybe we're supposed to tell ourselves that. The Gemara says if a person sees that Yisurim is coming upon him, you have to make an inventory, take inventory. What possibly you could have done that might have led to that. So it always bothered me. It always bothered me the following thing. It's a Jewish custom. It's a Jewish custom, especially among the Sephardim. When something goes awry in your life, the minute you're riding on the highway and you get a blowout in your tire, or your air conditioning in your house on a 98-degree day goes out, so you say kaparat avonot. I don't know, are there any Sephardim in the audience here today? Kaparat avonot. It should be an atonement for my sins. So you say it for yourself, and you take you take it on the chin, and you realize that God is speaking to you, and instead of being angry and reactive, you say kaparat avonot. It should be a kapara for avonot, and that's an important thing. Even in the attitude, a person should always think that way, and that's taking something that's inevitable, and often I speak about this, transforming it into an act of what the Rishonim refer to as bechir machshava, having the right attitude. But when you tell it to somebody else, it should be kaparat avonot. I mean, I remember a story that happened to my wife when we lived in Israel. It was an interesting story. We were sitting on the porch. My wife was hanging up some laundry outside, and as they do in Israel. I don't know if people still do that in America. Anyone still have clothespins out of their window, clotheslines that they use and hang their clothes? I don't know, but in Israel they still have it. And suddenly, I was standing there, suddenly a cigarette fell down from like 4 flights up. It fell into her, I don't know if she wants me to say this, it fell into her, she was wearing a robe, and she was, jumping up and down, and, obviously, and it burned a little hole in the thing. So I remember, they heard a commotion, and the person come down, and they saw what happened, and the first reaction he said was, kaparat avonot. You can say kaparat avonot to yourself, but you don't tell someone else kaparat avonot. I think when you say someone kaparat avonot, even though you may be well-intentioned, and say, look, something happened, you should, it should be a kapara for your avonot. That's not for you to say to somebody else, because that's exactly what they said to Eiv. They were probably well-intentioned, trying to tell him, look, you have to figure out why God is punishing you, because you yourself taught us that there's a plan and a rhyme and reason. But you can't say that to somebody else. And I would think that that's also, you can say it for yourself, but when someone else has to say kaparat avonot, this is one of my pet peeves over many, many years since that episode that happened to us in Israel. Wow, it's hard to believe. I came back from Israel. I'm already back. It's hard to believe. I don't know where the years went. 22 years. I just can't believe it. Okay, at any rate, the longer you live, the older you are, the harder it is to believe somehow. The more time that goes by, it seems so absurd. But okay, that's what happens as you get older. So let's go a little further. And then he says, another case, however, but obviously, if someone's doing a specific avera and you know that maybe that's something that caused them, so it says over here that maybe, you could say it in a way to help him sort of understand, maybe to realize that he did something wrong and do it in a kind way. It says, one may not ask another person. Another thing, if you ask someone his opinion and you know that the person does not know the answer, sometimes we do that, and sometimes people are cruel like that. And you put someone on the spot, and you know that they don't have the answer. And sometimes we do it to really just to torture the person. Sometimes we want to get a point across, and we don't like their attitude, and we're going to put them on the spot. That's a nosdvarim. You even always say, you've eaten a piece of chazah when you do that. One may not ask another person, do you know a certain masechta or a certain science? The guy who failed math. Say, hey, maybe you help me out with a little calculus. He says if he knows the person doesn't know it. This is only true if he knows that the other person does not know it. If he's not sure, you're allowed to ask him. Also, this is brought down, you're allowed to call people by a nickname that the person doesn't like. This is also even if the person is used to the nickname, and even if he may not turn his face won't turn colors, but it's something that he's not necessarily fond of. Some hold that the issue applies only if the person gets a little embarrassed. Okay, they hold it only if he's used to it and he does not get embarrassed, it's not a problem. Okay, if someone, we're going to do 2 more halachas here. If someone hurts his friend's feelings by asking him a mechila for a friend. Well, we got some background noise here. We get sometimes people don't realize it. So, okay. So it says if someone hurts his chagrin feelings, but by asking mechila for it, the friend will get more hurt. He should ask him mechila b'cholos. In other words, this is a very right. What happens? This is a famous discussion in Rabbi Salanta. It's really a halachic discussion. Let's say you hurt somebody. Let's say you did something to somebody and you want to ask him mechila, but the person doesn't know what you did to him. He doesn't know that you're the one who put the like the kids, put the cup of water on the door. I don't know if they still do that today. And when he opens the door, falls on his head, and you want to ask him mechila. So there's a big question whether or not I'm allowed to ask him mechila for something I did. He doesn't know that I did it. By my telling him that I did it, he's going to say, "What? You're the one who did it? You're going to cause the guy more anguish." So that might be Einos Dvarim. And Rabbi Salanta says, you don't have a right to tell someone what you did if he doesn't know, just because you want to extract from him forgiveness. On your cheshbon, you should cause someone pain. And that's exactly, if it's a really difficult situation, sometimes it happens. We've caused someone, and we want, and again, very often it's with Lashon Hara. But if you're going to start telling him, I spoke Lashon Hara about you, you may end up causing more averis, let alone not being forgiven. And that's why he says that those type of averis, you ask the person in a general way, like we do sort of, just perfunctorily on Erev Yom Kippur in general. So therefore, maybe he'll be machir even without knowing the specifics. Whether that works or not, I don't know. Okay, for example, he just gives an example. With that, we'll close. Reuven hurt Shimon's feeling a few years ago. It's possible that Shimon by now has forgotten the whole story. But Reuven's asking Shimon Mechilim, specifying what he said. Reuven might be reminding Shimon about what he said, and Shimon might then relive the hurt feelings. Here, it's even if he knew it, but you're going to remind him about an episode that he forgot about. Instead, he should ask Shimon for general Mechila for anything that he may have done for him. Okay, that's the lesson for today. Hopefully, everyone will continue on the path of being careful what we say. And I wish everyone a good Nacht. And I think they're waiting for me for Mincha. Thank you, everyone.